Hello everybody, welcome to the next in our series of webinars. My name is John Rose from Treeconomics. I'm joined today by Danny, also of Treeconomics, and John Ball of Sidmouth Arboretum, and we're going to hear about the UK's first Civic Arboretum. So I'm going to ask our two speakers to introduce themselves and we'll go from there. So over to you, Danny.
Yeah, so hi everyone, thank you so much for joining. I think we've got a good number of you here, but I'll talk quite slowly just in case. I think a few more people are probably just logging in at the minute. So a really big warm welcome to everybody today, and as I say, we're really chuffed to have John here from Sidmouth's the first UK Civic Arboretum. He's going to talk about that in more detail in a minute. So for anyone, people might have been to our webinars before, but my name is Danny and I'm one of the senior urban forest consultants at Treeconomics. I've been with the company, I think, almost 5 years to the day. I think we've got about another week to go, and then it will be officially 5 years entirely. But I tend to work on a lot of our projects that have kind of a community or a training or a collaborative focus, because I've got a background in education. It's something that I really enjoy. So that's what I tend to work on, and primarily those are often our urban forest asset evaluations, which some of you will know as iTreeCo projects. We're going to be talking today about quite a range of topics, and John and I are going to be sharing the time between us. So at Treeconomics, our mission is sustainable treescapes for everyone. John, if we could go to the next slide, please. And we work with a range of clients, from sort of local authorities to other organisations, so people like Highways England, the Forestry Commission, and of course community groups like Sidmouth Civic Arboretum. If we go to the next slide, please, John. So we work really closely with our clients to help them to understand and to value the benefits of their trees in lots of different ways. So that can be through projects like we're going to talk about today, or it can be through tree planting strategies, or maybe urban forest master plans. But a lot of our work is underpinned by those benefits that trees provide and trying to create a sustainable treescape for everyone. If we can slide on to the next one. So some of you may have been to our last webinar, which was also me talking. And at that webinar, we talked about the new tree equity score, and that forms part of the foundation stage of this sustainable urban forest journey. And we help people all the way along this process, from foundation right through to the end point. And this topic that we're going to talk about today is really focused on that assessment stage. So it's around understanding what you've got and being able to start having data that turns into information that you can help to use you in your strategic planning to start prioritising your work and start organising how you're going to deliver it. So we're going to be focusing quite a lot today on urban forest asset valuations, as I say, which some of you will know as iTreeCo projects. So we're really pleased to have John here from Sidmouth's first Civic Arboretum, and John from Treeconomics is just going to launch the first poll, and then John from Sidmouth, if you'd be happy to start your introduction, that would be lovely.
Okay, let me just launch this thing for everybody, and this one is really just to set us off as who do we have here today. So I'll give everybody about 30 seconds just to reveal themselves. Is that working for everyone?
Yeah, we can see that, John. That's come up brilliantly.
Right, just give you another 10 seconds. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, about 80% of people voted. Let's see what that brought up. So about almost a third of us from local authority, a couple of people from NGO, quarter from consultants, and a third of us from somewhere else, 10% academic. Okay, thank you.
If you want to go on to the next slide for John to do his intro, that'd be lovely.
All right. Hello, everybody. As you've heard, my name's John Ball. I've moved to Sidmouth about 11 years ago and knew about the folk festival here and was very interested in the science festival and intrigued by the Arboretum. Ended up going on one of the Arboretum walks, meeting Diana East, who was the founder of the Civic Arboretum here, and then volunteered to help out with the first tree survey, and said maybe we should do it again in 10 years time. And lo and behold, it's 10 years time and I'm still here and we're just about to start again. But yeah, more of that one later. I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about the concept of the Civic Arboretum. We're a group of enthusiasts. We're all volunteers, and we try and look after, or help to look after, the trees in the whole of the Sid Valley. It's not a large valley. It's about 6 miles long. It has a population of 14,000. So we've been doing lots of different activities over the past 12 years of the Arboretum. But one of the main focuses over the last 2 years was to become a charity, which we did in 2023. It was a little bit of an effort. We looked at what the objects should be and wrote them, went to the Charity Commission, got them back again, wrote them again, and then received a note saying, if you use these objects, you will become a charity. So we did. And it's fairly easy to summarize. We're looking at planting and maintenance of trees and hedges. We're looking at education and we're looking at health. And the planting and maintenance, we've had a target set by the Town Council Environment Group to plant 1 tree for every resident in the valley over 5 years. So that's 14,000 trees and whips, and we're 2 planting seasons in, and we're 9,000 trees and whips in the ground. As you can see on the slide, that's one of our planting activities from a couple of months ago when the sun actually shone, and that's up to the north of the of Sidbury on the map on the right hand side. So we've done a lot of planting, relatively speaking, but we also support all sorts of other groups and initiatives. So we've put together 4 different community orchards with different groups across the whole of the valley, and have been a focus for tree giveaways to people from Devon Wildlife Trust. I guess the other element of that first bit, the maintenance side, is something that we do, or try and do, a lot of. I'm very pleased that we have a monthly meeting, and in that meeting we decide which of the sites that we planted we will go back and visit and check that the trees are all right, or whether we should be taking away stakes or mulching and these sort of things. And we're sort of become the go-to point for town council if we get any vandalism. Even yesterday morning I had an email saying a tree had been knocked over in one of our sites. Could we go and put it back up? And not myself, but 2 other people, Ed and Graham, went up and sorted out that tree. So that's our sort of planting and maintenance. On the education side, we had an initial town leaflet which focused on Sidmouth itself, and then have gradually expanded the number of leaflets that we've got from 1 up to 5, including the one that you can see there focused on Sidbury. And we've now got 2 trails which are accessible for wheelchairs, one in the middle of the town, and one in a really special part of Sidmouth called the Byes, which has a really pleasant walking environment and lots of lovely trees. So the 5 leaflets are being moved under the Visit Sidmouth umbrella into electronic form, so that you can actually download those and take them with you on your phone should you wish to. And as well as having those as self-guided walks, we join in with the Sidmouth Museum, who provide history and geology walks and now tree walks. Those we thought would be suffice to do those once a month, and we now do them every week through the summer, from Easter to the end of October. And it's lovely to meet up with people who just have an interest in trees. You never know who quite you're going to meet, whether they come from Kew Gardens or whatever. But yeah, very good. The other bits that we're doing in terms of the education side of things, we have an annual tree week, so which has a series of walks and talks. We're just planning that one for May, and a tree evening, which has now become a tree day in November, where we invite craftspeople and do another series of talks. So quite a lot going on there. We also help out or try and provide activities for schools. And hot off the press, written by Ed, is, you can't see that because of the reflection, but that's Sidmouth World of Trees. That's a book that's just come out in the last week, and describes the origin of I think 33 different trees that we have across the valley, from where they come from and how they were found all the way across the world. We're very lucky in as much as Sidmouth has large houses which collected trees in the 1800s and brought those together. So as well as doing the sort of pure sort of education, but there's a bit of an overlap with that, we also do the walks, but we do those, or try and do those, for other groups as well. So we're doing more and more of that. So we provide walks for people with mental health problems. There's a group called the ASPI group, Asperger's group in Sidmouth, and we've done 2 walks for them. And we also take trees into hospices and talk to people there, as well as many other different groups in the local area. So that's a sort of background of the Arboretum. We're moving on, and I will come back at the end after Danny to talk a little bit more about the survey, which the first one was done in 2014, and we're just about to repeat in 2024. So thanks very much.
Thanks, John. That was so lovely to hear. And I just wanted to say we were really glad to have John join us from Sidmouth. We thought it was a really nice opportunity to kind of celebrate the fantastic work that the team at Sidmouth are doing, and really sort of show the impact that communities can have. So it was really great to hear that, and all the fantastic things that you guys are doing, and quite a varied range of things as well. So thank you very much. I'm going to just then take us back. I'm going to slightly do the more technical side of things today. So John, Rose, could you launch the final poll and move on to the next slide when you're ready, and then we'll
okay. Have you ever measured the benefits of the trees in your local area?
That's the one, thank you.
Okay, 10 more seconds. Got about 2/3 of people have voted so far. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And share results. Right, there we go. It did start off as an even split. It actually went 2/3, 1/3 for a bit, but the nose happened just about. So there we go.
That's really interesting. I always find it fascinating when we do the polls and you think, I wonder what these are going to come out as. Fantastic. Okay, well, it's really nice to see that lots of you have engaged in sort of measuring the benefits of your trees. So hopefully some of the things I'm going to talk about will be familiar to you. But what I'm going to do is just give us a bit of a slightly more technical background, I suppose, to the project that John and I are going to talk about. So in addition to all the fantastic things that John's talked about, the tree trails, the tree establishment, and sort of engaging with lots of people throughout Sidmouth, in 2014, we worked with Sidmouth to undertake an urban forest asset valuation, which, as I said at the start, you might know that as an iTree Eco project. And we use iTree Eco to process all of the data that we collect as part of these projects, and we use that tool to help us turn all of that data into information which people can use and can help sort of guide their practice and guide their management. They're a really amazing project. They bring so many different things and are a really nice way of working with communities and providing opportunities for groups to learn new skills and to go out and do some surveying. So the projects typically span about a 12-month period. So we usually start doing the planning somewhere between January and sort of, I suppose, May. Surveying then we take place during the summer. So all of the field data is collected sometime between sort of June and September, when all the trees are really fully in leaf and are sort of, at their maximum potential for photosynthesis. So we carry out all the surveys during the summer, and then we do all of the report writing and analysis using iTree during the following sort of autumn winter, between sort of September and December time. So the projects themselves follow a very similar sort of process. We run it using a sample survey method. It would be completely unrealistic to try and survey all of the trees within any urban forest, whether it be a town of Sidmouth or a city like Belfast. It just would be unrealistic. So we use a sample survey method, which is really statistically robust. And typically we spread about 200 to 250 plots randomly across the area that we're studying. You can see that in the map on the screen. Don't worry, you don't need to zoom in, you don't need to see it in detail, you just need to see that there are lots and lots of dots on the map. And all of those dots represent one of the plots that our volunteer surveyors will go out and have a look at. So when we run the project, during June, usually at the start if we can, to try and give us as much time over the summer to collect the data, we train up a group of volunteers. We get them organised with equipment so that they can go out and survey all of the space within those circles. So the plots are always circular in shape, and the area is equivalent to 0.1 acres. So it's quite a good size area. And everything within that plot is surveyed. So we survey all of the ground cover. We look at, is it grass? Is it tarmac? Is it shrub? To build up a picture. We then look at the land use. So what is that area of land actually used for? And if there are trees, there are not always, if there are trees within that plot, we also take measurements and make some assessments of sort of condition of those trees. And all of that data is compiled and processed using iTree Eco, which is a fantastic tool. There is a suite of tools, there are others, but that's the sort of core tool, and it was developed in the US by the US Forest Service, Davey, and their partners. So that's what we do once we've collected all the field data, and we process it through iTree, and at the other end we use that then to assess what we've got in their urban forest. So it will give us lots of really useful information. It will help us to know what's the sort of species composition, what's the age structure, and we can use all that information to help us assess, how diverse is that urban forest, how resilient is that urban forest to, some of the threats they may be facing, such as like climate change or pests and diseases. Really, really useful information which we can utilise, and we can help to inform decision making. Now, in addition to all that information, it also gives us information about the benefits that those trees provide. So it enables us to quantify in terms of amount, so we can say how much in terms of kilograms, how much carbon do those trees actually store, or how much in terms of you know, weight, how much air pollution do those trees remove, how much stormwater do they hold, and being able to represent those kind of benefits in a numeric way, so in a quantity, but also in a value, so we're able to assign a pound value, means that anyone can understand what those trees are doing. Even if you don't know anything about trees, you don't work with trees, it means that anyone with an interest is able to kind of interpret those values and that information, which is a really powerful way of being able to utilize it. The other real benefit is that tree eco studies are at a landscape scale, so we're looking at the whole area as one, and we also look at trees that are both in public and private ownership. So often there are many more trees owned privately than there are by sort of the local authority who look after the other proportion. So it's really valuable to be able to understand that whole urban forest rather than just the little pocket that either a local authority or highways might own. So it's a really powerful tool. I think that was everything I was going to say on that bit. I'm just trying to remember if there was something else. I think that is everything. So if we could go on to the next slide, please, John. So as John mentioned at the start, in 2014, Sidmouth have already done this survey. So they did the first of the 2 surveys. And in a moment, we're going to talk about what their plans are. I mean, we've already given it away a little bit, John. we've done a definite spoiler, but we're going to talk about their plans for this year coming up, which are really exciting. And I thought just before we jump to that bit, I could talk very quickly about another place within Devon as well, by coincidence, who've also done a 10-year resurvey. So John Rose, if you can skip on to one more slide, please, that would be great. So Torbay, which is also located within Devon, was the very first Eco survey that was done here in the UK. It was the one that was used as the pilot to kind of prove the concept and make sure that everything was working. And they have recently, so we published this in 2022, but 10 years on from their first resurvey, they reran the programme again. We're going to talk about that, as I say, for Sidmouth in a moment, and I just thought I would share a couple of the results. So a lot of our projects are used by our clients to lever additional funding. You know, if you've got a really solid understanding of what you've got, it's much easier to be able to justify why you need to gather more funding and what you plan to do with that funding. So it's a really helpful tool in that sense, but being able to then compare your data over a 10-year time period is really valuable. So what we found when we redid the Torbay survey is, interestingly, we found that their tree count had actually gone down. So there were a lot less trees when we resurveyed in 10 years' time. But the really positive thing was that canopy cover had increased by a considerable amount. Carbon storage had also increased, as well as pollution removal and avoided runoff. So we looked into the study and we tried to analyse what, you know, why has this happened? Well, how have we got less trees, but we've actually got much greater canopy cover, and those benefits have increased as well. And a lot of the tree numbers, you know, had been decreased through sort of thinning, through other sort of practices within Torbay, but we also, the very first survey had included much smaller trees within the survey. So we reran the data just to make sure that wasn't affecting the data. And actually, when we reran the data, there was still less trees and these values had still increased, which is absolutely amazing. So it just shows that actually the management that's happening in Torbay is really maximising the benefits that those mature existing trees are providing. And actually, you know, perhaps we need to also focus on our existing trees as well as establishing new trees. So I'm going to hand over to John very quickly to talk about sort of the plans for Sidmouth and perhaps why they've been considering the resurvey for their work. John Rose, can you skip to the last slide, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Well, as you've heard, we're we planned and are in the process of putting together the survey. Already have through the events that we've been holding over the last few months, we've already got a potential survey team of 24, which is larger than we had in the 2014 survey. So the idea is to get all of those 24 people together next month and just give them a bit more background on what was done in 2014 and what will be expected of them in 2024. We may gain a few more, we may lose a few because of doing that. But essentially they will then be provided with the equipment that Danny has mentioned, and we will schedule a couple of training afternoons for all of them, roughly at the beginning of June, end of May, to make sure that we get everyone up to speed to do the surveying. The data will be collected over the 3 months of the summer, and we then have to do some data alignment from the older survey data to this survey data to make sure that our species are aligned, etc., etc. And that's going to be done by Treeconomics. And then we will move on to the reporting. Now, I'm very interested, looked at the Torbay report before going back to the Town Council Environment Committee to get prices for the areas of the reports that we want. Having a baseline with a couple of points on, I think, is extremely important. And you've already heard about how Torbay have managed their trees, reduced the numbers, but actually increased the tree cover, which I think is very encouraging. So Sidmouth is working on a baseline of 23.2% of tree cover with about 405,000 trees. I don't think we will have such a positive result in terms of the reduction of number of trees. Our species distribution in 2014 was larch approximately 20%, ash 11%, and we know that large numbers of those trees have been taken down. They have been replanted, but whether we're going to get back to anything like that cover, I'm not sure, but it'll be very interesting to do. The other thing which I'm hoping we'll get out of the survey is just looking at the balance between the green resources that we have here in the valley. So we've got already above average tree cover, but is it better to have more trees? Is it better to manage as is being done on one of the heathlands? Old forest is being cleared and heath being re-established, and the balance with the wildflower meadows, of which we don't have very many, but that I think should come out of the survey. Danny's already mentioned the carbon storage, but one of the big things that's happening in the valley, another group with an overlap with the Arboretum, we have a couple of people who are on both groups, are looking at the whole of the Sid catchment area and trying to work out the best place to plant trees or bring in flood attenuation. And we have a big landowner in the northwest who has just got a grant from the Environment Agency to do this work in that area of the valley. So there's a lot going on in trying to manage the runoff side of things. And with the amount of rainfall that we've had here over the last 2 months, everywhere is completely sodden, and I think that's going to be one of the most important things that comes out of the survey, is indications as to where we should be planting over the next few years. There are also the benefits of looking at the pollution control and temperature control within the urban environment, but we don't have a huge amount of urban environment. You can see probably 50%, no, maybe slightly less, 30% of Sidmouth in the picture below. So it's not a huge town, but that will bring those together. So baselining has always been something that has interested me, and certainly putting down on maps where we should be doing things is something I hope that the survey will bring together. So that's our major activity for the year, getting people involved, and hopefully by approaching the landowners who have survey points, we will find more places to plant trees over the subsequent seasons. Okay, thank you.
That was really helpful, John. Thank you. I think you explained it really, really well. You know, what you're kind of trying to achieve through doing the survey, and you know, hopefully having that information will really help to move, you know, your plans through from. We sort of think back to that urban forest, sustainable urban forest journey that I was talking about at the start. You know, having all that information to assess what Sidmouth has got, and actually being able to compare that over time is so valuable in helping to set up those management plans for the future, and start thinking about where you're going to establish new trees, and what management practices you might put in place for your existing trees. And it's, you know, it's been really successful for lots of other clients, and some of our clients like Birmingham, through the work we've done with them on sort of assessing their urban forest, they've been able to lever lots of additional funding, I think about £250,000. And I know when we did the first survey in Torbay, it meant that having that information encouraged all of the trees to move into active management, which are really big impacts and big steps to be taken. So we've got a nice amount of time at the end to answer any questions that people might have. So John Rose, I think you're managing our
Yes, I am. Face back on the screen temporarily. So I'll stop showing that so we can actually get some heads up. That makes sense. So I've got a couple of questions. I think this one's for you, John. So I understand that Sidmouth has a community tree nursery. Is that the case? And if so, is that true? And did the iTree study influence the species that they are growing there?
It's a really good question.
The tree nursery we've only had for about the last 12, 18 months, something like that. Like all these things, it came out of a chance conversation with an allotment holder who said that they had 2 allotments and would the Arboretum like half of one of them. And so never say no, not knowing quite whether we would use it or how we would use it, but it has been remarkably successful. So we've been planting temporarily trees in there, grown on for 1 season, but the biggest planting thing that we did this year, we actually had trees delivered about a month early, and they couldn't go to site. So we actually healed them into the nursery and used them there. And anything that we haven't planted is now growing on for next year. But it hasn't influenced, the survey came way before that. So it's really been an opportunity, and we're using, making the most of it, I would say, but it hasn't influenced the survey hasn't influenced it.
Okay, thank you. I've got one for you, Danny. This is from Leonardo Salesis. Firstly, thank you very much for your contributions. And so it's a question, technical one, I guess. How can I use a statistical estimation for environmental services for sites outside the UK and USA, in particular Argentina?
Oh, that's a good question. That's quite a technical question. So, and I do know the answer. So quite a lot of countries already have iTree Eco unlocked, so you're able to do it in that location. I don't know off the top of my head if Argentina is, but I suspect that it must not be, if that's why you're asking the question. So there is some work that sort of needs to happen in the background, which enables iTree to work. So it needs to have meteorological information, it needs to have some data uploaded from that country, but you can look to get that organised. If you have a look at the iTree Tools website, there should be some information on there, and I'm sure their technicians will be happy to talk you through the process. It might mean needing to gather some information from different sources, but it is possible to do if you have the data available. But I know some countries aren't still able to access iTree at the moment, but it is growing. I think the number of countries being added is really quick. So yeah.
Thank you, Danny. Back to you, John. What do you consider to be the biggest threat to the trees in Sidmouth?
I think I've already mentioned the ones that we've seen over the last 10 years with Phytophthora in the larch and ash dieback. So the worry is that we don't really know what's coming next, but hopefully the new survey will point out what's happening there. In common with many, I think my attitude has changed over the last 10 years. I sort of favoured using native trees, but I'm worried now that we're not going to be able to continue that just because of the temperature rises. One of our supporters called Bob, he has set up his own woodland where he's experimenting with new species of trees that we wouldn't normally have seen in here. So walnuts and hickories are being planted, and I think we're going to have to think a little bit more like that to actually have species which are going to survive, and that is in an area which is said to be the least affected by climate change in the whole world. The southwest of England, because of its maritime position, is likely not to have such great change. But in common with a lot of people, it's obviously probably the biggest worry.
Thank you. Good point. I'm afraid you're going to get the questions, John. You're the one that people want to hear from. Sorry, Danny.
Sorry, Danny.
I don't take any offence. It's a very interesting topic. I'm more than happy.
To what extent have you seen a change in attitudes to trees from the residents of Sidmouth as a consequence of becoming a civic arboretum?
I think it's grown slowly. We've now got a circulation list for a newsletter of 185. So, that's quite a big number in terms of those that are interested. And when we've done our planting over this winter, the maximum we've had is 28 people planting, 32 over 2 days on some of the sites. So, not huge numbers, but they're just about the right sort of number. If you have too many, you can't give people things to do. So I'm quite happy with that. I think more pertinent is the community groups that have formed around this. So we were really pleased to help a group it's called Hirebrook Meadow. It was a very plain piece of grass with 2 trees on it and a playground. And it's now a less plain piece of grass with 13 more trees on it and a fruit hedge all around the children's playground. And people are coming to us and saying, can you help out? That was about 2 or 3 years ago. This year, an abandoned playgroup area has been turned by another group into a fruit forest. And so they've taken some trees. We've also helped out with hedging and put a community orchard by the side of it. And that group is pretty much self-sustaining now. And if we can help, we do. And we can provide trees and get groups like that going. And there are many more examples. We're really lucky in Sidmouth that so many people are taking care of larger or smaller areas. It doesn't matter. But trees sort of unite those groups to some extent. Everybody wants to have some trees in those areas.
That's actually really interesting to hear, John. Thank you. It's quite good to see what I think of as like a slow momentum just driving in a positive direction. Got us sort of building on your last answer about sort of the south coast of England being particularly hit going into the future. Does the coastal climate in Sidmouth limit the species you can choose to plant? Are there any that you can grow that wouldn't grow anywhere else?
Yes, interesting question. We have a lot of holm oaks down here, which really tolerate both the climate and the salt, and they're planted as shelter beds in several of the gardens around here. We have a lot of Monterey pines, which really do like the climate, but because they were planted in the 1800s, we're now starting to see them losing limbs and falling over. So we've done a bit of replanting of those sort of trees. Another interesting one, which we've got a few of, but not very many, is the foxglove tree, which has been planted now in East Anglia, I think, for the first time commercially, to try and see what the impact is on carbon sequestration. Can also be harvested incredibly quickly. We've got a few of those around. So there are a lot of trees that are here. I don't know of any which we would say we couldn't plant in this area, going the other way round. But yeah, our sort of aim, unwritten aim, is to have a Monterey pine on every road coming into Sidmouth, because that would be quite nice to have that as a marked tree. And Sidbury to have cork oaks, one in the north and one in the south. There's a huge cork oak in the middle of Sidbury, which is a magnificent tree, but we've had an idea that we should be planting a couple more because we've only got one in the valley.
Excellent, thank you. So your build is the first civic arboretum in the country. Have you now got any followers? I don't know who can answer this, Danny or John.
Well, I know of one. Oh,
John, you go first, John, and I'll jump in if.
All right. Well, I know of Lewis in Sussex, who I think are the second one who set up a similar organisation in the last couple of years. Danny, I'm not sure the date.
Yeah, no, I don't know the exact date, but yes, they're also another arboretum town, and there's one more which we're aware, there may be more that we're not aware of, but those are the two that we know of. And there's one called Stonehouse, which is in Stroud, just outside Gloucester, which is also an arboretum town. But that's only 3 in the whole of the UK, so very, very special towns to come and visit. But I thought that was really interesting, the question about just going back a tiny bit to the trees in coastal climates, because it can be a really difficult thing establishing new trees in coastal areas. There's a lot more challenges, isn't it? You know, when you consider the wind, the salt, and they can be very unique. Even if you look at one coastal area compared to another, they can be very, very different. We did some work on that quite recently, and it was quite fascinating actually, looking at, you know, which trees could be well suited to those kind of environments. So I thought that was a really interesting question for someone to ask.
Okay, right. That is the end of our sort of live questioning from individuals. Could I ask if both of you want to give a bit of a closing statement, if there's anything else you'd like to add to what you've already said?
Sure. That's actually perfect timing, because we've got a little nugget of gold for the end of the webinar, haven't we? So it's good to have a few extra minutes. But yeah, I was just going to say thank you so much for everyone for joining. It was really, really nice to be able to give Sidmouth Arboretum a platform to share all the fantastic work that they've done. And, you know, communities have such a big impact on our urban and our trees within rural areas as well. And I think it's really nice to hear from somewhere that's been so successful. And it's always a story that people love to hear. Whenever I talk about, you know, historic eye tree projects and things that we've worked on, Sidmouth is always top of the list, and you always have some really interesting and exciting takes on things, which is really lovely. So a really big thank you for joining us, and yeah, for sharing the story of Sidmouth today. And if anyone would like any more information about urban forest asset valuations, please feel free to get in touch anytime. My email is just danielle@treeconomics.co.uk, and we'll send that out with the survey after the webinar as well.
Okay, well, I would say if anybody wants to come and visit or is anywhere in the area, please come down, find us. We're at the museum every Friday from next Friday for the next 6 months, and we're quite happy to talk about trees for as long as you wish. I mean, the walks are scheduled for 2 hours, but sometimes you don't get back. So, but normally I return with everyone. Okay, but it would be great to see people and yeah, share experiences.
That's fun. That's fantastic. Thank you. I've got a little note, Danny, just to ask you about iTree conference.
Yes. So I think, John, have you got a slide for that one? I think Dave had a separate slide. Okay. So we have a conference coming up this year in Dundee. Just bear with me 1 second, and I'll see if I can share that from my screen. One moment. Okay. Sorry, everyone. Is everyone able to see that? I think it's just going full screen on there now. Yeah. Lovely. So we have a fantastic conference coming up, which is couldn't be better linked to our talk today. It's all around using iTree, and not just using the tool, but turning that information, that data, into action and information which you can use within the urban forest. So it's not just about data, it's actually what are the impacts and how do we use that data to turn it into information. So please have a look at the website, our website, which has all the information about the conference. You can register and book your ticket there. We'd love to see you. It'll be a fantastic conference, and thank you very, very much.
Right, and I think we have a final. I'm going to leave those details on there, and we have a little song to play you out to. That's right, this is courtesy of Sidmouth Civic Arboretum. Do you want to introduce this very briefly, John?
Yes, there's the two people you'll hear singing. One is Kelvin Dent. He wrote this song about 3 years ago, and we've used it at a lot of our events, tree evenings, and it's the other singer is the person who leads the Sidmouth Folk Choir. So it's become sort of our we have to sing it every now and again song. And I asked Danny whether it was something that we should use, and she said, "It's so Sidmouth, you ought to hear it." So I got them to actually record it, and it's now on our website. Tess, not only is she the folk choir leader, but she's also the one who set up the food forest and is helping out and leading on that as well. So all these little webs sort of come together. But the song kind of tells you most of the story that I told, so you could have just listened to that and I wouldn't have needed to say anything.
Very good. Right, I'm going to use this as our song to play everybody out as we say goodbye. So before I do that, can I just like to thank you very much, John and Danielle, for excellent presentations. Very much appreciated.
Okay, thank you.
And thanks everyone for coming.
Lord, for Sidmouth Arboretum. Lord, 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 we've got an arboretum. Lord, 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 it's the best one west of Seaton. Lord, 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 it never will be beaten. Thank the Lord for Sidmouth Arboretum. It started out at first with tender ambitious, It grew and grew and grew while stretching out its roots. Now we all hold a stake in this body of repute. Oh Lord, please let our work bear fruit. Our civic arboretum was the first park in the nation. We cherish it with love and tremendous admiration. It helps with conservation, health and education. Dear Lord, we're filled with jubilation. We plant our little trees with tender loving care. We plant them where there's any land to spare. And everyone in Sidmouth always helps to do their share. Yes, Lord, we've branches everywhere. Lord, 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 we've got an arboretum. Lord, 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 it's the best one west of Seaton. Lord, 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 it never will be beaten. Thank the Lord for our Sidmouth Arboretum.
Bye.